Say hello. Hey, everybody. I'm Amy Lang, and thank you so much for taking time out of your hectic life to hang out with me today. We are going to be chatting about talking with your neurodivergent kids about you know what. But before we get started, I would love to know a little bit about you. And we're going to do that in just a second, but I do want to tell you about myself first because some of you may not know who I am. So let me get those sweet little slides up, get that rolling, and then get these folks who are coming in and get started. So here we go. So this is me. So I'm live in Seattle. This is my family. That's Milo and Carrie, my spouse, and me. And I got started doing what I'm doing because I was a sex educator for a very long time, over 16 years. I was doing the usual stuff with adults and teenagers. So pregnancy, birth control, abortion counseling, STI counseling, loved it. And then when Milo was about 5, he was getting ready for a bath and he grabbed his penis and he said, "Hey, Mama, did you know?" And I stood there and I thought, please do not tell me it feels good to touch your penis because I have got nothing. But I did the poker face and I said, "What?" And he said, "I can see the veins in there where the blood goes." And I said, "Great, bathtub." And that was my moment where I realized I was not going to be a comfortable rock star talking to my kid about sex. And so I realized I needed to get it together. So I started doing research for our family about when and how to have the conversations, what they should look like, everything everybody always wants to know, right? And as I was doing that, I realized I could also help other parents. I have a master's degree and my focus was in adult education. So I combined my two favorite things, talking about sex and working with adults, and started Birds and Bees and Kids. And as you can imagine, that was in 2006. Milo was mortified by my work for almost his entire life. I think he's over it now. He's 24 and he seems well adjusted and, you know, anyway, so that's how I came to doing this work in general. And so what happened in terms of me starting to work with parents like you, parents and caregivers of neurodivergent kids, is that I do one-on-one consultations. They're called quickies. And I realized in the last few years, like I'd be talking to a parent and then they would say, "Oh, autistic," and drop in some kind of neurodivergence. And so I thought, oh, okay, this is interesting. And then I started asking at the top of my consultation, any neurodivergence in the family. And I would say it felt like half the parents I was talking to would say yes. And so I thought, okay, y'all need help. And so I get out there in the universe of the Googling and I can't find anything. I can't find anybody that's doing what I'm doing now for you. I can't find, there are barely any books. There really aren't any resources. So I thought, all right, y'all need help. I'm really interested in this. And so I got a certification in neurodiversity and sexuality. I've done focus groups. I have been learning. I am not perfect at this. I'm still learning. I always learn from y'all when I'm teaching. And so I started working with families like yours. And I do want to be really clear that I'm not neurodivergent, Milo's not neurodivergent, but Carrie, and I have permission to tell you this, is dyslexic. And we did not know that that was a kind of neurodivergence. And I just need to say that explained some things about my sweet spouse. And so anyway, so that's how I landed here. And just a couple other things just before we get rolling is that I just also want to acknowledge that we come from all different backgrounds. And I'm a white middle-class woman. I'm married to that guy. I'm educated. I'm secular. I am liberal. I'm sex positive, which means that I see sexuality as a positive, wonderful, healthy, important part of life. And so that's where I'm coming from. And when we talk about sex, we are always talking about values. And I believe my job is to teach you research and evidence-based information that's going to help you help your kids. And your responsibility is to honestly believe me about the research-based business, and then to teach your kids your values about sexuality. And we all have them. And so I want that to be something that is important to you in these conversations because it's going to be important to your kids, no matter who they are and no matter how they show up in the world. So that's my sweet story. and let's talk about what you're gonna learn, what you're gonna talk about. So we're gonna be looking at the importance of talking with neurodivergent kids about sex. I gotta get this thing out of my hair. I need to move you people too. I like you up at the top of the screen. I do better. Um, and the importance of talking with neurodivergent kids, general tips for the talks with them. We're going to look at your top 3 concerns, like just from all my surveys of parents and chatting with folks like you, how to learn more from me. I have a new resource that I'm really excited about, and I think is going to be super helpful to you, our hope is. And then we'll do Q&A. So we will do Q&A as we go along, so feel free to pop things in the chat. My pal Sarah will be showing up here at some point, and she'll be helping to moderate that and some other stuff too. And one more thing. Last time I taught this, we got Zoom bombed with some pretty awful porn. I couldn't see it, and so I've reset things, and I am very hopeful that that person is no longer in our lives. Because I can't see it, if somebody sees it, unmute yourself and tell me, and we'll all get out. So, but that's not going to happen again, because that's not going to happen again. It was pretty terrible. Anyway, and what was the funniest part of that is one of the parents who was on said in the chat, she said, "Did she do that on purpose to teach us a lesson?" And I was like, no, I would never do that. Not an object lesson. Okay, so let's do this. I am very curious to know more about you. So I have a little poll for y'all to take. And I'm curious about how old your kids are. I'm launching it. If your parents talk to you, your caregivers, where you are in the conversation with your own people, and then what variety of neurodivergence is happening in your kiddos' world. So if you want to take a few minutes to do that, and I'm going to make sure everybody is in that needs to be in. Good. As soon as I do that. 5 to 8-year-olds. Right on. It's always fun to see for me. All right. Okay. Anybody? Oof, we got some no's. The no's are winning in the sex talk department. It's not a competition. Autism and ADHD, dysgraphia, sensory processing disorder. All right. Let's see. A little bit of time. Okay, looks like we got everybody tapped out. All right, here, let's see what happened. End the poll and share the results. I think this is so cool to see. So we got some people with littles. 9 to 12-year-olds are in the lead in terms of age. Looks like we got everybody age-wise. Okay, no conversations for the sex talks. One time, books and no conversations. That was me. Occasionally, and somebody, one of you got regular talks. Count your blessings, even though it might have been horrid at the time. Only puberty. Yep, not yet. Tried and wouldn't listen, only puberty. Yeah. They've had sex ed at school, occasionally talking and regularly. Great. Cool. Thank you. Okay. And let's see. Autistic, ADHD, pretty much tied. Some dysgraphia, sensory processing disorder, PDA, and other. All right. Okay, cool. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that with me. It always helps me kind of know where to direct my information. Okay, let's do this. So, I would love to know what brings you here. So I'm going to pop you into breakout rooms. I'm going to put 3 in a room. Just wait. If you are by yourself, I will move you to another room. If you can't take part in the breakout room, you don't have to go in. You can just hang out with me. Or if you can't talk, you may eavesdrop. No one's going to mind that because there's always something more to learn. So what I'm after is this very thing. What brings you here? So I'm going to give you, let's do 3 to 4. That feels safe, doesn't it? And then we do that. And then we're going to give you about 4 minutes. All right. So take yourself out if you don't want to play. If you can't play, if you are finished, just come on back and we'll go from there. So thank you. What brings you here? Introduce yourself quickly and get down to business. Hey, thanks for making it. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna move some people around here. Put her in with him too. Take just a minute. Okay, is anybody else alone and lonely? Looks like here, let's move Linian and Andrea. Oh man. Okay, those two are together. Those two are together. Those three are together. Okay, I think everybody's got someone to talk to. Cool. Hi, I'm gonna make you a co-host. Thank you for coming. And where are you? Do this thing. Okay, good. I'm recording. I had a moment of panic. I wasn't recording. For those of you who are in the room with me, if you want to put in the chat what brings you here, I'm happy to see that. And if you, yeah, what's going on? What brings you here? Thanks, Sarah, for handling that. You can put it in the chat or you can just talk to me if you'd like. I'm all for that. I'm always afraid to pause the recording. Oh, and look, I'm changing the slides as I'm doing things. Sorry. I don't know how I manage that. God. How did that happen? It's being really weird. Sorry, I'm gonna stop sharing. So I don't understand what's happening with the slides. That was very weird. Sorry, everybody. Okay. Must have been happening while I was doing my poking around. Go back to this. Okay. Thank you. New message. Let's see. All right, Julia. Admittedly, multitasking at work, fine. For the can't talk the breakout. Here for curiosity. Haven't started the chats yet with my 7-year-old. Also to hear different folks that a giftedness is a neurodivergence. Yes, it can definitely be a neurodivergence. Those smarty pants kids' brains work differently. All right. All right, sitting down. Okay, we'll put that on the list. Oh my God, I'm changing the slides totally accidentally. I don't even know what I'm doing. I just touched the chat, so I'm not going to touch anything. I'm afraid. Sarah, will you look at the breakout rooms and see how much more time they have? Since I'm afraid to touch anything.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. All right. Thank you. I really am scared of this. All right. It's great to see these questions. Yay. Okay, cool. Super curious 9-year-old. Oh yeah. So interesting how everybody's just so wired so differently, regardless of their how the brains work. Yeah, cool. All right. All righty. We're closing down. Thanks, Sarah. Again, I just am not touching anything.
Zoom, this is part of what makes these classes so wonderful is Zoom culture. Just Zoom culture. It's all good.
Right. We're all human, right? We're all human. So it all goes sideways. Not very sideways. Last time it went very sideways. It's not going that sideways this time, right? Okay. Are we coming back in? Looks like it. All righty. So love to hear from you what it brought you here. We've got some stuff in the chat, but if anybody would like to wave and use their voice, love to hear what's on your mind, what brings you here. Hi, Leora, I see you. Does that mean you're going to talk? Nope. Okay. Let's see what's in the chat. Let's see. I know we get some good stuff. Let's see, loved Penny Williams. Where are we? I do the sex talk every few months, but we haven't gotten very far because he shuts down. Definitely going to talk about that. So he hasn't really heard it. Got strategies for that. My mom was a nurse. Dun, dun, dun. Multitasking here for curiosity, really. Haven't started the chats yet with my 7-year-old. Also to hear from different folks if giftedness and neurodivergence. If that's in your universe, giftedness and neurodivergence, well, how about we give that a thumbs up? My oldest is 9 and has ADHD and is very interested in puberty and relationships, sexuality, all that comes with it. Very curious, want to be able to guide her as best as possible. 5-year-old with very little shyness and approaches strangers, kids and adults, cheerful but sweet, but does not hear no or stop. Yeah, super common. Teenage nieces are starting to communicate with other teens in a non-friends way. So I need to be able to be available for the talks they don't want to have with parents. I love that. Yeah, they need you because you're going to be saying, I understand a little English, but I have a hard time writing and speaking it. I have a 13-year-old neurotypical son with executive function problems. Okay, great. I will be slower. My teen is having more and more questions, having their friends share more at school. Oh yeah, lots to handle. 2E, yeah. I do the talks every so often for age appropriate tips with a 13-year-old with ADHD. Okay, got our sweet little girl. Okay, high IQ, but the neuro stuff makes the second part hard. Yeah. Okay, awesome. All right, we're gonna cover most of that. So as we go along, if you have a question, get it in there and we'll pause and Sarah will review and report. Okay, now I'm gonna try and do my slides. Everybody ready? Okay, let's go. Yay! As we go along, we're going to have slides of nature, and that's just your reminder to maybe breathe and settle in as you're learning. These days, that can be a little rough. Let's begin at the beginning. So the first thing is this. Preparation is the goal. Trying to get, like most of us, how we learned in our culture, the communication about like sex education is trying to get your kids to not do it. It doesn't work, as you know personally, and I know professionally. But if you switch your frame of reference and think about this in terms of getting them ready and preparing them, they do better. And it's easier for you too. Like when I had that change, that frame of reference change with Milo, I was like, oh yeah, I want him to be ready for this. I want him to be prepared. And trying to get people to not do stuff is really hard. But getting them as ready as they can be when you're doing your work to do that for your kids, it feels better and it's ultimately better for them. So preparation is what we're looking at. Preparation. The next thing for your sweet kids is just to assume they're like every kid. All of the stuff you all put in the chat, every kid goes through that stuff. There is a child who's neurotypical who's doing the same stuff. That sweet 5-year-old, that I hear that all the time about all kinds of 5-year-olds. So it's better for your child if you assume they're like every kid. They're curious, they're going to be wanting romantic and sexual relationships, they're going to want to know about bodies and different kinds of families and all that stuff. So when you come from this point, from this perspective, it's going to encourage you to talk with them, give them more information, and to be really engaged with them when it comes to this. And I get it. Your kids have they're very different support needs. I know that, but there's that coming from this place where they're going to be like everybody else, even if they're not. This is really about helping you give them the right amount of information. So we'll talk a little bit more about that because I know your kid is not just like every kid. They're different. Their sweet brains are different. Their bodies are sometimes different. So there's this show called Shutting Down the BS, and it was an autistic young adult who was interviewing other autistic young adults. And the particular topic that time was about sexuality and sex education. And this is what they said, all of them said, it's all about the parents. And this is absolutely true. It is your responsibility to make sure your kid has this information, that they are as ready as they can be, that they don't have to go find it. They don't have to struggle to learn about it. And I know we all just did a poll. Y'all didn't get what you needed, right? Right. I know this from personal experience. Very many books at my house, no talking, no talking. And here I am devoting my life to sex education. And the last thing is this: you are powerful. You have a lot of power in these conversations. You are the most influential person in your kid's life. You know them best. And even if you feel awkward or uncomfortable or like you don't know what you're doing, you still have a lot of power and influence, even if you just talk with them really very occasionally, even that little bit of communication increases their safety, increases their security, increases their knowledge. So don't think that you're not. And part of this comes from our parents, right? Our parents didn't feel powerful in our life. Well, maybe they did, but they didn't, when it came to this, they didn't seem helpful, most likely, right? They didn't seem like they had any power, but they did, because, we'll just look at me. Right? They did, and maybe not in the best way. So I really want you to embrace the fact that you are really powerful. So let's talk about this a little bit more. And this is why, like I just said, you are in their lives the most. They trust you and you know them well, right? This gives you a really excellent place of power, and makes it you the best person for this job. So here's some nature. Let's enjoy it for a moment. And then the last thing, I mean, you're just getting into the whys. And I think that it's so important, to really, this kind of reflects back on, like, assuming they're like everybody else. They need to know they have a human right to a full life, being sexual with people, having a sex life, being a sexual person, having romance, dating. That is part of being a human being, and that is part of having a full life. They are sexual beings in whatever that looks like to them. Of course, there's a scale of sexuality. And then the last thing, too, one of the reasons they need to know is that they are at higher risk for being taken advantage of. They're at higher risk for, I actually have a list, for sexual abuse. They're at higher risk for accidental incidents. I have a little story in just a moment about that. Doing things like looking at someone and just blurting out, which is sort of the impulsive decisions, like nice boobs, right? Great. That's not socially appropriate. And sometimes they'll do the nice boobs thing with somebody who's really, you shouldn't be saying nice boobs to, like, I don't know, their aunt. Not that they should be saying that to anyone, but that's not a good space to be. So with the impulsive decision making, they don't do as well with the if-then thinking. And I do want to acknowledge I'm being really general here, right? I'm being very general here. So that if-then thinking doesn't quite work as well as a kid with maybe a more neurotypical brain. A couple other reasons, oftentimes they're developmentally behind. And so somebody said that their 11-year-old really operates like 14 to 18 months behind his siblings. And so what that means is you might have a 12-year-old that's more like a 10-year-old, and they're hanging out with other 12-year-olds. And so the things that other 12-year-olds are thinking, talking about, and doing, you're more like a 10-year-old kiddo is going to be exposed to. So the way to keep them safer is to talk openly about them, about sexuality, dating, crushing, relationships, so they have some language. Also, so that they know they can talk to you. Their peers are very confusing. They're very confusing, and they can misinterpret social cues. So a sort of classic example of that is that if your kid's crushing on another person and that person is really friendly towards them because they're a nice person, they may misinterpret that and think that it means they're crushing back. And then things get very complicated because they have this idea of what you do when you're in a relationship with someone, and that might get pretty tricky because they don't understand the dynamic. They don't understand the dynamic. So here's an example. I did a talk like this essentially at an autism conference, and when I was done, a lovely man came up to me. He said that he had been raising his grandson from birth, who was, I would say, higher, like somewhere between mid and high support needs, autistic. And he said, my grandson is just obsessed with shoes. And he likes to take pictures of shoes, of people wearing shoes. And he said, we've got him basically trained so he needs to ask permission first. Can I take a picture of your shoes? And so he's doing pretty well with that. But at school, there was one girl in particular, or maybe I can't remember now, it was like maybe a couple of girls. And he would ask them regularly, can I take a picture of your shoes? Because of course they're teenage girls, their shoes were changing constantly. And they said yes. And they kept saying yes. And they kept saying yes. And he couldn't read that they really didn't want to say, they didn't want him doing that anymore. And he became kind of assertive with them. I don't have all the details, but all I know is at the end of this, he got expelled. He got expelled. This is an autistic kid who's having trouble with impulse, and it's around something that he was violating their boundaries, right? He wasn't touching anyone, but he was violating their boundaries. So he got expelled, which, I mean, who's here on the fury level with me? Yeah, yeah. So his grandfather was awesome. So we did a little troubleshooting, and I said, how about you get him a photo album? So he has the photo album of pictures of shoes to look at. And so we talked about that. And then, of course, I could not help myself. And I said, well, at least it wasn't boobs. So this is an example of this impulse control and the being impulsive and that kind of thing. A couple other reasons they need to know is social isolation. They can oftentimes just end up in their own little world, and getting them when they get out in the world, they aren't going to have the information and skills they need to navigate, like if they're working or they're crushing on someone. So if their world gets bigger, they're black and white thinkers sometimes. So actually, you know what I love? Would somebody, if you have an example of black and white thinking that your kid has engaged in that's around relationships in some way, would you pop that in the chat, and Sarah, will you keep an eyeball? They're black and white thinkers. So it's really this like, if X happens, then Y, that means Y, right? So I'm not going to use that example because we're not ready for me to be really graphic. So if something happens with my body, then that means I can XYZ, right? And they don't get anything in between that. And then the last piece is this: porn can have a stronger influence because of their sticky brains. It can be much more appealing to them. They're more likely to see it as real sex. So this is a black and white, right? Black and white. That's how you do sex. So when you do real sex, that's how you do sex. We don't want anybody having porn-like sex. I mean, unless they're an adult and they're consenting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is not where we start, right? So those reasons are why it's so important to have information about sexuality when you're a neurodivergent little human. A couple other things that you need to know. The autistic people in particular, but neurodivergent people in general, are 3 to 6 times more likely to be queer. We see this over and over and over again. That means you need to be ready for your child to tell you there's something other than straight and cisgender. If you don't know what cisgender means, it means that the gender you were given at birth basically matches your private parts. I'm cisgender. I'm not going to prove that to you, but you can just trust me. And then they have higher suicide rates, queer kids do. And then when you layer neurodivergence, neurodivergent kids also have higher suicide rates. So talking with them openly about sexuality, being open to who they are, even if this really pushes your values. Nobody wants their kid to commit suicide. Nobody. And the one thing that keeps these kids on par with their peers and the general population is parental support, Even a little makes a difference. A ton makes the biggest difference. So the reason I like to talk about this is because I think that it helps parents of neurodivergent kids understand when their kid changes gender. It's like, this is kind of intrinsic to who a lot of neurodivergent people are. And the good news is we've got lots of support and information about that. All right. How are we doing? Did we get any black and whites in the chat?
There
We
were
share.
some really great ones, actually. I love the Leora shared that her teenager, after reading How to Kill a Mockingbird, said, but no, really, how do you kill a mockingbird? He thought it was a how-to book. Very
Oh,
black and white. Like, I thought that was so great. So good.
funny.
Love. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. All right. Oh, here's some myths. And here's a bird, not a mockingbird. I don't even know if that's a real bird. Thank you, internet. All right, so here's some myths, and these are some of the big things that get in the way of parents talking with their kids. So one of the big ones is they're trapped in childhood. They're just trapped in childhood. They're not ever going to be interested in sex and sexuality because it's their kid. They're trapped there. This myth that they're safer from sexual abuse, absolutely not true. Kids who have information about sex and bodies and relationships and boundaries and consent are safer from sexual abuse. When predators are looking for kids to prey on, they don't want them informed. Like, one of the biggest things you can do is make sure your kid knows the correct names for their private body parts. So if your kid says, "Hey, my penis itches," that predator is going to be like, "Okay, that someone's talking to that kid," as opposed to saying, "Hey, my tallywhacker itches," right? Which is, tinkle waggle is my favorite, but right, I love that word. Anyway, the other one is that if they know about it, they'll do it. Not true. Not true. If they know about it, what we know is that when they decide to do it, they do it safely. Their birth control of pregnancy is on the table, condoms, they talk about it, they have better consent, and they tend to wait just a little bit longer. Remember, we can't get them to not. We can only prepare them as much as we can. More myths. They can't understand consent. They just can't get it. They can't understand how to give it. They don't understand how to get it. They can't handle sensory experiences. And yes, lots of neurodivergent kids have sensory issues. They don't like to be touched, their clothes bug them. But the reality is that an autistic, for example, an autistic person who's really got a lot of sensory issues, they can have sex and do sexual things. It takes a lot of communication, takes a lot of time, but they can do this. And then this last one, they can't make their own healthy choices. That is just not true. If they're not given the opportunity and the information, how do you know? How do you know? Right? How do you know? And I know you know your kid. And right now, they're 15, they're hormonal, they're crazy. And yeah, they probably can't make their own healthy decisions, but that doesn't mean that's who they are in the moment. That doesn't mean who they are in the moment. And then no interest in romantic relationships, don't want sexual relationships, and just aren't capable. Just aren't capable. Now, when we look at neurodivergent people, they have well, I don't want to go, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole. Be very careful here, or we'll be here all night. They might be more likely to be asexual or aromantic, so not interested in sex and not interested in romantic relationships more than neurotypical human beings. But that doesn't mean that you assume this about them, and it doesn't mean that they're not capable. I mean, just think about love on the spectrum. I know people have problems with that, but it's really good to watch and to learn from those folks, even though I know it's not, real per se, but there is some information there that you can glean watching these people as they try and sort out how this all works, And when parents believe any of these, even just a little bit, they're less likely to talk to their neurodivergent kid. We will look, as parents, we'll look for any excuse possible to get out of having these conversations. Doesn't matter what your kids' brains are like. We will work hard. I worked hard to make it not happen occasionally. I mean, I am a parent, right? Even though I know all the things, doesn't mean I was real confident in doing them. So again, this sort of back to, you're really powerful. You have, well, honestly, you know way more than your kid does. You're powerful, you know them best, and it's not going to hurt them for you to talk to them. So don't buy into that stuff as best you can. If you catch yourself, just remind yourself it's not true. It's not true. Okay. Anything I need to know about in the chat, my chat minder? Okay, cool. Thank you. All righty. So where am I here? Let's do some talk tips. So these are some things that you can do that will help the conversations be easier on you, frankly, and easier on them. So first of all, you need to speak to their cognitive ability. And I know you really, sorry, it's not just speak, it's communicate. But when you're talking with them, you need to speak to their cognitive ability. Keep it really short. So don't use 8 million words when you're talking about something, and also keep it step by step. So I'm just going to give you condoms as an example, talking about condoms. So in terms of keeping it short, I wouldn't necessarily say this exactly to a kid. I wouldn't anyway. I'm just going to give you the little script. So condoms. What's a condom? A condom is something that a person puts over their penis before they have sex. It catches semen, so a person can't become pregnant or pass an STI. So we're pretending we know about pregnancy and STIs, right? There we go. How do you use it? You put it over you wash your hands, you read the expiration date, you tear open the package, you roll it down over the penis. If your kid's a little bit older, you can say, this is FYI everybody, you can spit in the top of the condom, puts a little lubrication in there, everything feels better. So you're not starting here, but did you hear how simple that was? Everybody breathe. Everybody breathe. Super short, super simple, step by step. And you have to practice this. So I have a book called Sex Talks with Tweens that's all scripts, but that's simple step by step. Keep it factual and concrete, right? It was really factual. This is what a condom is. I was very straight. I didn't use any slang, right? I said penis, no euphemism, no euphemisms. As your kids get older, you are going to use euphemisms. You're going to say oral, sorry, I'm just going to go all the way, people. Oral sex is when one person puts their mouth on another person's penis or vulva because it feels good. Sometimes that's called blowjob, going down on someone. But when you're teaching them, you don't use euphemisms. Does that make sense? You don't start with condoms and you don't start with blowjobs. So everybody breathe deeply. You just got to get there. These are goals. These are goals. And then I love this. Why as well as what? So unfortunately, I did not take notes and I didn't save the YouTube clip, but this was a person who works with autistic kids, and this is what she said. So I love this. Why as well as what? Explain exactly what causes body odor, which parts of the body are most effective, why regular washing is important, both for health and social reasons, and how to wash properly. So you see that step by step by step, concrete, reasonable, right? This is more pretty complicated. You probably want to do this in chunks depending on your kid's support needs. So this was great, and I feel bad that I don't know who that was, but here they are, whoever you are. Thank you. Couple other tips, no eye contact. Don't make eye contact. Let your kids squirrel around. If they're jumping around the room, let them jump around the room. Don't try to force them to sit down and we're going to have a sex talk. It's Wednesday, it's hump day. We're going to talk about sex. Don't do that. Really let them be who they are. Nobody likes this. It feels really uncomfortable to everybody, to you and to them. So side by side when they're in the car. And then you need to attend to their learning style. You need to attend to their learning style. So I keep saying talk, right? It's the sex talks, right? But that's not true. It's the sex communications. I just can't figure out a shorter way to say that. It's a little clunky. So attend to their learning style. So is your kid a visual learner? They're great videos for kids. Is your kid an auditory learner? There are about 4 audiobooks about puberty only for anybody. Are they a reader? Do they do better with graphic novels? Like, how does your child learn best? And then you want to attend to their learning style. And then this last one, repeat. Repeat is always for everyone, but for neurodivergent kids, it's repeat, 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 for so many reasons. And the good news about repeat is that you can use different methods to repeat. You don't have to be like, and then you wash your armpit using the soap. You don't have to be like that, but just you're going to be mindful that you're going to need to repeat yourself. Okay, so I am wondering if you would all just take a minute and maybe settle in a little bit. Take a breath. And I'm curious, I love it for people to like talk a little bit about how their kids learn best. And I would really super love it if you would be willing to talk about your child and the way they learn best. And if you've had any real successes as you're like working through maybe this topic or other topics, if you found something that really works well for your kid, because it's always going to help somebody else. So if you want to speak and be brave, love to hear it. Need a minute?
I think Leora, your question's great. Yeah, I would go ahead. You just go ahead and unmute and you can ask.
Yeah.
Hey, Amy, thank you so much. Well, he learns, especially when one of his preferred topics is the center of it. So right now, anything around soccer is he just loves it. And so if you want to talk about anything, you have to start in with like, what are Messi's stats and who do you like better, Mbappe or, Ronaldo. The fact that I know all these people says everything about
I'm impressed.
that how much he talks about it. So I'm learning it through. So that's part of the problem is like, I don't even know where to start, given that that's how he likes to learn. And we just really keep clashing. And the question in the chat is that I have no problem saying the scripts, and I feel I've done a really successful job with my 2 teenagers who are more neurotypical. But like whenever I bring this up, he says, I don't want to talk about bodies.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling like I'm modeling consent by saying, okay.
Yes.
But then I said, so we can talk about it. You can decide when, but it needs to be between 20 minutes from now and 2 months from now. So like,
Pick a time frame, kid.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really hard and good to know, right? So how do you center relationships and sexuality, and how do you bust through that resistance, right? It's kind of two things. So I have an idea for the centering the sex and relationships piece, like using the soccer. You might be able, and then we're gonna chug along here. And I'd love to hear people are putting in the chat their learning styles. Yeah. So what you might do is you might say, you know what, I'm really curious about their personal lives. Who's having a romance? Right? Who's having a romance? Huh. I wonder how they met. I wonder if they were having crushes. You know what a crush is? Right? And then see if you can wedge some in that way. And then the other piece is that, yeah, you're modeling consent, but also he has to know this. He has to know. So you can just say, you have to know. So it's either now or later, and I'm deciding when the later is, and we'll keep it short. And I've got tips for you in just a second. But you're not, there's consent and there's consent. Like he has to know this. He has to know how to cross the street safely. He has to know that you can't just whap someone in the butt, right? This is all the same. It's health and safety at the end of the day. And that's your job, right? How's that? You look kind of happy. Yay, good. Okay. What are our learning styles? What else we got?
So we have lots around books, we have lots around social stories, and asking the child questions, things like, what do you think? Or what is this feeling? And multiple choice options seems to be going well. And Jessica shared also that driving in the car, talking while driving has been super successful. And Ling Yan shared that visual learning is really helpful.
Great. Great. Yeah, cool. Love hearing all that, right? Social stories are awesome. Social stories are awesome. Cool. Thank you. All right. And then really this is use all the tools in the toolbox time, right? Use all of it. Use all of it. Okay. All right. So here we go. The top 10, but really only the top 3. This is a biggie. Consent and impulse control. Consent, when I have been getting my work together here for y'all and surveying and talking and focus grouping, consent boundaries is always the top, safety, always the top of the list, which makes so much sense, right? Your kids are really vulnerable. Okay, my friend. So let's just talk about the word consent. What does it mean? It means agree. It means agree. So consent is a wishy-washy word. Adults have to think about, what does consent mean? I have to think about consent. I have a pause, and I'm a grown-ass woman who's worked in this field, and I know what consent is, right? So with your lovely kiddos, use the word agree. Use the word agree. They agree to hold hands. They agree to hug. They agree to kiss. Everybody says yes. They say yes. You say yes. Everybody agrees. So do you hear how clear that is, as opposed to everybody consents? Everybody consents. Nobody uses the word consent in regular life, right? We use it in one way. Really, at the end of the day, we use it in one way. So use both. They agree or consent. They consent or agree. And then you're planting that seed, right? So I'm not anti-consent. I'm just like, let's make this clear, because how are your kiddos? Concrete thinkers, right? concrete thinkers. So that's my first thing. My next thing is this. I would like to know, and I would like you to talk with your new best friends about what are you already doing to help your kid with the impulse control issues, the consent conversations. I know you're already doing things. So I'm going to pop you into, Sarah, my skill breakout room maker, is going to pop you into breakout rooms again and just talk about this. What are you already doing to help your kid with the ideas of consent, agreement, that kind of thing? And is that clear? We good? So same rules as before. If you can't play, you can stay out here with Sarah and I. And if you guys strongly encourage you to, if you can, or just can eavesdrop if you're in a room with 3 people to do that. So you get about 4 minutes. Is that what that's set for? I love having an assistant. Makes my life better. Is it working? Yeah, okay. I'm just paranoid. I'm just paranoid. Yeah, and like I said, if you want to just talk to me, you're welcome to. Or if you've got what you're already doing in Chatlandia, that's great. Oh yeah, look at that. Breakout rooms. Are you shuffling people around? Yeah, cool. Heather, can you talk to me? Because I can see you, which is lovely.
Hello.
Hello, what's going on?
Oh,
What
trying to, I'm also ADHD, so I am
oh,
multitasking.
okay. I believe in that. I believe in that. I know.
Juggling all the things.
Juggling all the things. Anything coming up for you with the consent piece and boundaries?
Yeah. You know, excuse me. I've actually been with the UU church for the last 10 years or so, and they have such a great curricula around a lot of this. I'm still getting more comfortable with it. So as I'm learning it, I'm also like promoting and helping this with my kiddo. So this is good to just kind of like reiterate and feel more comfortable in
Yeah,
what I am passing on to him.
great.
Um,
Are you teaching it? Are you a facilitator?
I'm not, my partner is.
Great. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. One of my best friends writes the curriculum.
Oh,
Yeah,
excellent.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm very familiar. Yeah, it's great and it's really progressive.
It's excellent. I really, really wish I had had that in my life
Don't we all?
when I was his age.
Yeah,
I would have saved myself years of heartache and um,
yeah.
yeah, depression and
Yes.
feeling awful about myself.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. I'm so sorry. And that program, if for those of you who are listening and are not familiar, it's called Our Whole Lives, and it is created and written by the United Church of Christ and the Unitarian Church, which are both very liberal, open, wonderful churches. And they have a curriculum that is it's faith-based, and they also have a secular version, and it is super progressive. It is fantastic, and it covers all aspects of sexuality. And I can't say enough good things about it. So Heather, great advertising. So if
Yeah.
you don't have to be a
And
member,
all ages too.
all ages.
There are, yeah,
Or
we've got a kindergarten through first grade class
yeah,
right now happening at, they're in the middle of the crew, but yeah, coming in the fall will be a fourth and fifth grade.
great. Yeah, it's very cool. It's very cool. I love it. It's such a good program. I wish when I have private schools reach out to me and ask me about like, hey, we need sex ed curriculum. I'm like, owl, just
Yep.
get owl. Get owl. You can do anything you want. Private schools can do anything they want, and they oftentimes don't bother to do any kind of sexual health curriculum, which makes me crazy because they can do what they want. They can pick what they want.
Awful.
And there's really good sex ed curriculum out there. So yay. Well, good for you for having that as a good model and doing it with your sweet kiddo. What's your kiddo's situation?
He is ADHD, 10 years old, and yeah, starting to go through some puberty changes. So that body odor one was a conversation we were just having earlier this week.
Yeah, goats and farts. Milo smelled like goats and farts. I know, Sarah, you have one of those. You have a person that might have smelled like goats and farts, right?
I sure do. I sure do. Yeah. And he's got really long hair too. So I would be like, no, no,
Oh, fun.
once it gets long, no, no, we're not, you gotta watch that thing all the time.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
true. So true.
yeah.
Oh,
Well,
so good.
thanks.
By the way, the breakout rooms are closed. They should be back in about 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Thanks.
Oh, I'm doing something weird. I just made something weird.
Don't do weird things.
No, I'm afraid. Okay, sorry. I fixed it. All right. Love to hear from you. Feel free to speak up. What are you already doing to help your kid with this part of life? There's 27 new messages. Sarah.
Amy also was sharing in the chat. No, I'm sorry, not Amy, Julia, that they have really great conversations. She has great conversation with her daughter about crushes and boyfriends and girlfriend stuff at night while they're laying next to each other. Like you said, Amy, not face to face, but next to each other. It was a really great share that Julia had there.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, one of the things about let's if you have your thoughts, please put them in the chat, but I want to be mindful of our time and I can't figure out why I can't click things. So, consent and impulse control. So, same as before, talk about it in small chunks, act it out. I'm a big fan of role playing and so practicing practicing the ask first rule. So you and your kiddo you practice asking first. So you say to your kid, can I have a hug? And your kid practices saying no. And then you show them what that's like to be respected. And then you reverse roles. So they get it in their bones. Young kids love this. It's also really good for you to be reminded. Point it out. Point it out like, oh, hey, look, you're watching a show. Oh, hey, look, did you see how that they asked first before they gave that person a kiss or held their hand? So point it out. Use code words with the impulse control. So if you've got, so there's somebody with a sweetie that loves to just run up to people and hug them. So definitely practicing with her and then using a code word that you agree on, like flower or petal. Flower, which is to remind her that, oh, right, she has to ask first. I love code words. Children love code words. Everyone needs code words. So code words are awesome for all kinds of things, especially with impulse control, because it's quick. Oh, there it is. Oh, petal, flower, whatever. Flower's nice, right? And then sure, it might seem weird to some people, but that doesn't matter because it's really between you and your kid. And then if everyone in the family is using it, it just makes it easier on everybody. Expect it. You know your kid. You know when they're going to get all busy up in somebody's business. You know when they forget the rules. So expect it and plan for it and talk about it. Hey, remember we're going to see grandma, and the rule is, or remember that you need to ask first, or she needs to ask you first, or have some planning around it, and then be really kind and clear about the consequences. So if you have a kid who is a blurter, right? I had a mom tell me that I think he was 6 or 7, ADHD, was constantly slapping her in the butt, constantly hitting her in the butt, constantly popping her in the butt. And it was making her crazy. And she was getting mad at him and yelling at him. And she was like, it was driving her nuts. And she had a lot going on. And so we talked about with him, it was impulse and it was attention seeking, right? So we talked about how she could fix some of what was happening with him. But then she told him, when you do this, you can get in trouble. If you forget and do this to somebody else, you can get in trouble. Just want you to know that. I don't want you to get in trouble. Warning people, we're having a little issue with not being able to ask first before we hug, right? So let them know and then teach them how to say, no, thank you, stop, right? Or maybe if you have a code word. And then the last piece of this, don't shame them when they forget. So this mom, he'd forget and whomper, and she would be like, I told you, what's wrong with you? And which we can do that without saying that, right? So just remember, your kid, they're struggling with something, and I know this is incredibly hard. I do not have this lived experience. I know it's incredibly hard when you have 7 million things going on, and you might have 7 million things in your head and 7 million things with your kids and your life and everything, to keep it together, to keep your poop in a group. But if you can just take a sec, if you can just take a minute before you engage around this, you'll do better and you'll feel better, and they'll feel better. And a lot of impulse control issues of that kind of thing with, in particular with this kid, it was hugely attention seeking, hugely attention seeking. And it worked every single time, because they don't care if the attention's good or bad. They just want the attention. All right, what else do we have here? Oh yeah, won't talk, won't listen. So just from my own personal experience, Milo told me he would rather talk to strangers than me or his dad. And he also told me he would never ask me or Carrie a question. So it was great. So big, won't talk, won't listen. They can't close their ears. So let's talk about this because I know this is a thing. So handful of ideas. First of all, use a timer. Say, I need to talk to you about it. I need to talk to you about a sex thing. We need to talk about this thing. Set your timer. I'm setting my timer for 3 minutes. So you have to be ready, right? You have to be ready. And also say you don't need to respond. You don't need to respond, but you always check for understanding. You always say, what do you think? Thoughts, questions, concerns? How are you doing? You always give them an offer, an opportunity to respond. So, but they don't have to respond. And you never know what's going to happen. Keep it really, really short. Reward them. Now, I realize that in parenting circles, this can be frowned upon. Sometimes you got to use all the tools in the toolbox. So maybe there is a section of a book that you would like them to read. Maybe it's something, maybe it's how to wash in the why you stink in the puberty department. So maybe you have a deal where if they read that with you, then they get a check mark earning something that has nothing to do with electronics, or you bribe them with candy. I don't care. This is a health and safety issue. Not for everybody, right? Not for everybody, but just something to be mindful of. There are different ways to get it into them. Talk in front of your other kids, your partner, etc. So if you have other kids, talk with them openly in front of your kid. Don't worry about age difference too much, because you are not going to be able, you will not hurt your child with this information. So you've got a 15-year-old and you got a 10-year-old, and the 15-year-old is talking about how they're having cramps because they have their period. You can just jump right in there with like, oh, you're having your period. You mean you're having menstrual blood every month because, you're not able to get pregnant? Like, just talk about it. Oh, do you need tampons? Yes, I need tampons. That kind of thing. And then I just remembered something I didn't talk about with the consent thing. I'm just going to put it in here because the other thing you can do is you can fake stuff. So your partner's coming home, you text them and say, hey, when you get home, I'm going to ask you for a kiss and a hug, and will you say no? We're going to do it in front of our kids so they see it in action. They don't know what you're up to. They're so self-centered. So do things like that. One of the things that Carrie and I did with Milo is I was reading the paper and there was a story about a 14-year-old who got pregnant or something awful, and then there were terrible things that happened to her. And I read that, and Carrie and I both read that, and I just looked at Carrie and I said, God, listen to this. Isn't this terrible? And I think we talked about abortion, and we talked about this 14-year-old getting pregnant and how sad that was and how she was mistreated and all that stuff. So we had a sex talk with each other in front of him. Completely legal. And they ignore us, right? But you know what? They also hear us. Okay, use books. So this is not for everyone. Cut out pages. There's a great book called Sex that's graphic novel style. It is this thick. I have it somewhere in here. I see it. It's really thick. And I know we don't abuse books, but sometimes we abuse books. One of my moms, she pulls the pages out of the section on masturbation. She stuck it on her kid's bed and he read it because it wasn't this overwhelming amount of material. Use Post-it notes, use highlighters. And then I like this one. Tell them they absolutely cannot read the sex books and you've hidden them. Sometimes it's very effective. And then this last one, you know your kiddo, but telling them it's great to be the smartest kid in your friend group when it comes to this stuff oftentimes works. It works. Who doesn't like to be the smartest kid in your friend group? Right now, you are the smartest kid in your friend book when it comes to talking to neurodivergent kids about sex. That was it, right? How are you feeling all puffed up? So just an example of this, when Milo started sex ed at school in the 5th grade, I was very excited, as you can imagine. And I was dying to know how it was going, but I waited 3 whole days, and we were walking home from school, and I said, hey, how's the sex ed going? And he says, oh, mama, the questions these kids have. And I said, oh yeah, must feel pretty good already knowing the answers. And he's like, yeah. And he got all puffed up. And I said, what are they asking? I'm not telling you. Awful. He's an awful child. So that puff up, right? You want your kid to be the smartest kid. No, I know some of you are thinking, well, my kid's going to tell everyone. And here's what I have to say to you. Maybe. And you do need to say to them, hey, kids can get in trouble when they talk about this stuff in front of adults in particular, and sometimes with other kids. I just want you to know that it might be smarter to keep it to yourself. And if something happens and you do talk, just let me know and we'll figure it out together. But it's safer that your kid has this information and get in trouble for spreading the good news than it is for them to not have the information. Does that make sense? It's just safer. It's just safer. You can't, I mean, your kid's already different. You're used to that, right? So now you're going to throw being a sex educator on top of it. Maybe not. Your kid, right? You know your kid, right? You know your kid, but they need to know. All right, look, let's take a breath and look at this potentially completely fake flower. Is it real? Is it real? Is there anything I need to know, Sarah?
No, but I'm absolutely loving their share that you guys are such good participants, by the way. This group is incredible. But just sharing, Leah, I love Leora said that she took her kids to the drugstore and sent her daughter into like the menstrual aisle and her son into the lube and condom aisle, and then took them out for treats. They met in the ice cream aisle afterwards and said, ask me any questions, we'll go get treats.
The boys went to the menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
Boys.
Oh, they did. Sorry. See,
Yeah.
thank God for Leora being here. Yeah. Isn't that brilliant?
I love it. Thank you.
That was so great. Yeah.
And then they were rewarded.
Brilliant.
Who cares, right? Who cares? That's great. Thank you. Love it. Love it. Love it. All right. Anything else? We're good? Okay. Let's do a few more tips. Plan, practice, go for it. Planning is what's feeling most urgent to me? What's feeling most urgent to me? What do I need help with? Like, that's the planning. Like, how am I going to do this? What's this going to look like for me? And I have a new resource that'll help you with that. We'll talk about in a little bit. The practicing is driving around in your car when nobody's with you and saying, a condom. What's a condom? A condom is a rolled up rubber piece of rubber that goes over a penis, or silicone that goes over a penis that catches the semen so people can't get pregnant or get an STI. Right? Every time you have sex, if you have a penis, you need to use one. We plan pregnancies in our family, right? Whatever you're going to say about it. So practicing is not cheating, it's smart. And then just go for it. Kids are so self-centered that when you talk with them, you can just say, I haven't done this before. I'm uncomfortable, but hey, and you need to know that tampons come in different sizes because of menstrual flow, not vagina size, for example. Yeah, make sure they know that, because people think that because they're uninformed. So just go for it. No, you'll be fine. And if you screw it up, you can just say, oh my God, that was crazy town. I'm going to try this again in 3 days, and then go recover and then come back. And the other reason to keep it super short is because of that. Saying things like, you're old enough now to know. Like, if you haven't been talking about this, you're like, you know what, you're old enough now to know. And I'm really sorry we haven't been talking about this sooner. Using books and other visuals just to get yourself going, whatever works for you. And then kids safe videos that you can learn from. And I've got a resource for you that I'll send you when we're done. So you figuring out your side of it is really important. And you reading the books, you watching the videos, you getting informed is going to help you feel more comfortable and confident as you're going through this. We talked about this a little bit. When you're doing an activity is the best time, washing dishes, making the bed, in the moment, and kind of when you feel the urge. So like this I love the being in the grocery store, and the tampon thing's exactly perfect. It's like, hey, these are menstrual products. You know, when people have their periods, which is when some blood comes out of their out of their vagina once a month. It's part of the reproductive process with the woman. They need to catch that blood so they can use pads or tampons. Tampon sizes are different because of flow, not vagina size. You just do it in the moment. We talked about like doing the activity is the same as don't look them in the eye. And then use all the tools, books, videos, shows, social stories, text, email, notes, real life, all of it, all of it. Mixed bag, mixed bag. And again, you know your kid's best learning style. It doesn't mean you're always going to be able to do that, right? It doesn't mean you're always going to be able to do that. All right, let me check my notes. So one example of using the tools is I have a mom who her kiddo, they have a whiteboard, and I think he's autistic and ADHD, and they have a whiteboard where she writes down, like they communicate on the whiteboard, and they communicate about what's happening after school, what's for dinner, you know, that kind of thing. And it's been this great tool for them. And she said to me, well, I'll just write the sex stuff. We were doing a one-on-one consultation. Well, I'll just write the sex stuff on that. And I said, no, because it'll ruin this safe family communication space, right? So then we talked about, I was like, what else can you do for him? And she said, I can tear pages out of the books. It'll make it shorter for him. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So we found some other ways, right? The whiteboard thing, I think, is great in that, but she was going to ruin the space, right? Does that make sense? Another option would be to, I used to have this thing that I called an Ask Anything journal. And it's just a journal where you write back and forth in it. Like you started out with some, whatever you want to talk about, and they can ask questions if this works for your kid. So it's a private space that goes back and forth between the two of you. And then, you know, really anything that you can come up with that you think will work with your kid, do it. Like I said at the beginning, any effort will help. Any effort will help. But really, at the end of the day, this is about health and safety, right? And making sure that they have everything they need to grow up to be a whole, healthy, happy adult. Okay. All right. Hey, look, a bee. I've had one bird and one bee. So I want to be mindful of our time. You just learned a ton. You just learned a ton. So I'd just like you to, I haven't really been very instructory about this, but I'd just like you to take a minute. If you can, just put your feet on the floor and maybe wiggle your shoulders around, take a breath. Kind of settle in a minute. And I'd just like you to think about what's one thing you can commit to doing in the next like 48, 72 hours. I don't know how is that right? Sure. Next few days, like what's one thing you could commit to doing of all the things we talked about? And just think about that for a minute. And I would encourage you to write it down just so it gets in your head and you can have something to reflect back on. So with one thing you can do, and if you're feeling bold, I'm gonna put it in the chat. The reason I like people to share their one thing is because it can be very inspiring if you're feeling a little stuck. And it might change your mind of your one thing. Are we being shy?
So Leora said she's going to use agree instead of consent. Kate is going to find her next book to use. I said I'm going to check in with my 15-year-old daughter. I've talked to her before about consent, but we need to do that again. And Virginia shared that she loves, I love the Ask Anything journal, and I will start one of those.
Great. Cool. Thank you. Love that. Yeah. Gay consent. Very important. I'm glad you're looking at that and agree, right? Agree, agree, agree. Okay. So let's see what is happening next. So the next step. So you just learned a bunch of stuff. And I remember at the beginning, I said I had a new resource that I wanted to share with you. And I didn't have time to cover everything. Like we didn't talk about puberty at all. We didn't talk about online safety and porn at all, really at all. I just maybe mentioned it and might have scared you a little bit. We didn't do a really deep dive into consent and body boundaries. And then we didn't even really get as detailed as we could about like just talking with your neurodivergent kids about sex. So, you know, I know this can be super confusing for you. It's really confusing for your kids. And you are the best person for the job. You know how they learn best. They trust you and they deserve to have this information from you so they can have the opportunity to grow up to be a whole, healthy, happy adult. So this is my new thing. It's called the Solution Center for Parents of Neurodivergent Kids. And it is a library, an online library specifically designed for neurodivergent kids. It's neuroinclusive and it's research-based, and there are videos and resources. And I have worked very hard and done a bunch of research to make sure that they're going to give you what you need to work with your kiddo and give them this information in a way that they can hear it, learn it, and that makes you feel good and empowered. And I think I've said this like 18 million times. I looked and looked for something for you, and there's nothing. There's really nothing. So I made this. So I just want to show you what it looks like, or just the information inside. So there are 6 different sections and detail. But as an example of how you might use this, so there's sticky situations. So your kid might come home and ask you, what's porn? Because their friends have been talking about porn and they don't know what it is. So they come home and they say, hey, what is porn? And you say, hey, great question. What do you think it is? Which is a good stalling technique. And then you can say, I need to think about it. And you come pop in here, you learn just what to do and what to say and how to handle it. And then you go back to your kid and you feel like a rock star because you know how to talk with them about this really uncomfortable and unfortunately important part of growing up. So the last one on here is this consent and sexual abuse prevention. So I just want to kind of detail that out for you because I know this is top of mind for you. So there's a video about why neurodivergent kids are at higher risk. Also scripts for talking about bodies and boundaries and consent. So just a deeper dive into what we did today, how to prevent accidental incidents. And then this last section, more info and resources. This is in every section has one of these. And as you know, things are changing and changing really quickly. And this is where I get this updated regularly for you. So you'll know what's changed, what's happening if I have new resources. And I will email you and let you know when that's happening. Alrighty, what else is happening? I'm using notes or we'll be here all night or all day. Let's see. Oh yeah, so I also do interviews with special guest stars who are neurodivergent themselves and experts in their field. So these are recorded and I'll let you know when they're happening so you can come and learn live and ask your questions and just get a different perspective than mine. Like I'm not neurodivergent, but these people that I have lined up are great and they're experts in their field. So we'll be doing that as the days go along. And so the other piece of this is the Neurodivergent Solution Center for your kids is separate from the Birds and Bees Solution Center. The Birds and Bees Solution Center is general information that every parent needs. So I kind of think about this as like the detailing nuts and bolts, So I'll show you the favoritist one, which is ages and stages. Everybody wants to know what their kid needs to know at each age and stage. So if you've got a middle schooler, a kid that's starting middle school or in middle school, you can pop into the middle schooler section and you can see line by line what they should know by the time they start middle school. So the nice thing about this is that you can go back and get caught up. So if you're like, uh-oh, what should I have talked about? You can go find that out. And then the other thing about this is that it will give you lots of talking points. So if you're wondering what you should talk about, ta-da. So I have Cindy, who is one of my clients. She is the mom of 2 neurodivergent kids, and she sent me an email after she was using some of my materials, and she said, my girlfriend with 4 neurodivergent kids needs to take part in this. The info is awesome, and I just love your presentation. And she was great. And I just love hearing from parents like her who are in it. And then she has a friend who's, I don't even know how to describe that, in it times 11 teen. So part of what you get is a one-on-one consultation with me. You can talk to me at any time about anything. It's private, it's just us, and I give you a recap and resources so you can get the help you need with a specific issue. And what else? They're 30 minutes long and they usually are $95. Alrighty, and then let's do the math. Okay, full price is a one-time payment of $149. The one-on-one consultation is $95. The total value is $244. But when you get it today, it's only $149. So it's a one-time payment, you never have to do it again. And I have actually two payment options just to make things easy. So you can do the $149 or you can make 3 payments of $49. And do you have the link? You don't. I have the link. Moment, please. Hang on, everybody. Am I sharing my screen? Are you seeing everything in my mind?
Nope, you're good. I have, as you guys have seen up above, I did provide a link for you if you want to do the one-time payment of $149. That's above. And here that is again. I'll drop that in the chat again.
Oh, that's actually the link. If you
Is that
toggle,
correct? Okay.
if you touch that 149, it'll toggle down. And can somebody do it to prove it? Yay, Liora, thank you. I love having friends. Okay, and then here's how you do it. You click on the link, you pick your payment, the 149 or the 49s, fill out the form and make your account. It actually happens really quickly, and then you can jump right in and access everything right away. So that's one of the great things about the platform is it's just really easy. All right, and then, oh my God, it's clicking. And then another client, she again took a class and started using some of my materials and said, I know this content will make every difference in my confidence and knowledge when guiding my neurodivergent son. Okay, so there you go. Click on the link, hop right in, and it is so clear to me that you are really committed to helping your kid have everything they need in life and to be a full, healthy person. And I so appreciate you taking time out of your crazy life and hectic life to learn about this and to spend time with me and trusting me with your kids and learning about all this good stuff. So let me see what else I want to say. Oh, I just want to check, does anybody have any questions about what's in the Solution Center or how it works before we get to regular Q&A? Anything coming up? No? Okay, cool. So let's do Q&A. What you got about, sex? That's a whole book. What can I say? Is there anything hanging over in the chat?
I was just wondering, I was curious to know if so I've gone through, it's definitely not the stork.
Yeah.
And the next one after that. And I have an 11-year-old boy now. And I'm wondering, I did look up the one that you referenced, sex, and
Yeah.
it was a little too much.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I looked at it and went, oh no, not
Yeah.
yet. So I was wondering if you had like a in
Intermediate.
between.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do. So he definitely needs to have a puberty book. There's one called Guy Stuff. There's another one that I can't remember the name of. So that kids need a separate puberty book from the sex stuff. And because oftentimes neurodivergent kids really struggle with puberty because they have sensory issues or just can seem just really scary and weird to have their bodies change. There's a book called It's Perfectly Normal, which is it's the same series as It's Not the Stork, and it's so amazing. It's a much less overwhelming book than his Sex book. He has another one that I can't remember the name of that's one level down. Do you know what it is, Leora? Yeah, it's in the link. Yeah. Yeah, that one's good too. But I really love It's Perfectly Normal because it's very clear and fact-based and sex positive. So those are really good options. There's another one called the Every Body book, which is specifically for queer kids that I would recommend that too. I'd recommend that too. Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, it's that, sex is a lot. That's why she's pulling the pages out. It's great in terms of the content, but good Lord, like I couldn't read it all. It's like, what? But they use it like you can put Post-its in there and say, check this out, right? Or you can, ruin the book. Your call, your family, your choice.
I think that's a great idea, ripping the pages out and just presenting a little bit at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, they're very engaging. It's really well done and it's way too much. I mean, for me. Okay. Hey, Liara, what's up? Giving me some sugar. Thanks.
Do you agree to receive digital sugar?
Yes, I do. Yeah, consent. I agree for
Yeah,
digital
okay.
sugar. Sugar me up.
So this has been so helpful, but I really think my autistic kiddo is gonna be like so freaked out when he finds out what this is all about. And he has put so many so many barriers to talking about it. And so we're raising all of our kids sex positive. And so he even shares a room with like a 17-year-old sex positive teenager. And so like he's getting a lot of information, but just he's not getting the facts that I really want to give him. And I think it's gonna freak him out.
It's going to freak him out. Yeah. Yeah, it might. But also, he's grown up in a household where this has not been taboo. And also, some people are incredibly private. And right, he has to share a bedroom with a 17-year-old. He's maybe a really private person. And then so this invasiveness of talking about bodies and all of that, and he just can't take it. Right? Which makes a lot of sense. And then we add the neurodivergence, right? We add the autism. So a couple things you might do is you might do this in stages. So you might just say, I get that you're really uncomfortable and you hate this stuff, but we need to talk about it. We'll figure out how to do that. You're done. Next. Hey, book, video, what do you think? He won't decide. You say, let's just watch this video. And it's amaze.org is the website. And then see what he does with that. And then, you really might do the puberty piece, right? Like I think that would be a good place to start with him because his body's changing and he needs to know what's up. And then you can use those random acts of senseless boners as like, hey, so by the way, and gentle him into it. But again, it's health and safety. He doesn't have a choice. And just saying, I get this is uncomfortable and weird. You can be under your blankets. Like I'll read to you. You can, you can squirrel around. You can do whatever you want. You here will make cookies and do it. Like, anything that you can figure out that's like a pleasant distractor might help. And then he'll get used to it and you'll get used to it. The other thing, would his 17-year-old sibling be capable and willing to kind of broach the topic with them?
Absolutely. And I think
There you
one
go.
way I think we could do it is what you said about the in front of. Like I think I could have one of my very open conversations with the 17-year-old in front of the 10-year-old and see how that goes.
Absolutely. Because you could even do this thing of like, hey, do you remember when you were 11 and you started to get like boners all the time, right? And prep your child.
No, we would be on the same page about it.
You would have it planned.
Yeah.
So, yeah, all the tools in the toolbox, right?
And
again,
we would have to tell the 14-year-old to leave the room because he can't tolerate it at all. He knows all the information. He's gotten all the information, but he's been very clear, like, we don't talk this anymore. And
That's right.
this is, it's just, it feels so strange to feel so equipped and have read all this stuff. And then my youngest kid's brain is just like, but I said, you're going to sleepover and you're having your iPads. What would you do if you wanted to look up on someone's iPad, like the word penis? Because your story about the horse and porn exposure, I think about that all the time. And he's like, oh, I would never do that. I said, what if someone wanted to, like, what would you say? So I've done those little things, but I haven't talked about intercourse or any of like the.
Okay, well, you got to get that party started and he will survive. He will survive. You're just going to have to cram it. Nope. You're just going to have to get it in there. That's right. You can do this. I believe in you. You have two teenagers and a third on the way. All right. Anybody else have a question?
I just wanted to add, I have had a couple private messages just to me, which I so appreciate you guys. You're so great. Having a question about the solution center. If you have a younger child who's neurotypical, will that information be inside the neurodivergent
It's
solution center
both.
as well?
So this Birds and Bees Solution Center, that's like comprehensive. The Neurodivergent Solution Center is hyper focused on neurodivergent kids. So you get the puberty information, like how to talk to issues for a neurodivergent boy, and that's, that's a little chunk, and then you go over here to learn all about how to talk about boy puberty. Does that make sense? So it's good for everybody. It's good for everybody. Yeah, thank you. Anything else? No? Are we done? Okay, we can be done.
Quick
Um,
question.
Yeah, go. Hi, Kim. Yeah, go for it,
Hi,
Kim.
I'm sorry. I had to say, I came on late because I couldn't connect. I must have been trying to connect with an old link. But I asked that question about advice about working with my niece's agency in New York. I don't know if you addressed that. It was in the chat.
It was your,
Basically,
go ahead.
I'm an advocate for my niece who is 32, who is in New York. I'm here. My sister is deceased these last, and my niece gets into trouble because she is so in need of attention and she's not able to get it in the right ways. So she ends up doing phone sex with old boyfriends and all go on. I've given her some talks, but because of her learning, she doesn't retain anything that I tell her. So I wanted to see if you have any advice about how I work with my niece's agency in New York to get her educated and to keep that going. Because just talking to her over the phone isn't enough. When I'm with her, I do what I can pictorially and all of that, but I'm at a
How old is
loss.
she again? How old is she?
She's 32, but she kind of is socially, she's socially inept to a degree, and she operates kind of on the mentality of like a young teen in
Okay,
this area of her life.
okay,
And in
okay.
other areas of her life, she's not self-motivated. She doesn't maintain her routines, heightens a problem, sorts of other
Yeah.
issues.
And then you're asking about how to support an agency that works for her, or her personal agency? Wasn't quite
Well,
both.
both, but I was speaking about agencies. She's with a housing agency. She
Okay,
lives in a group home,
okay,
and she, yeah, so she has a behavior therapist and she has a psychotherapist, but don't seem to be doing this in any routine way.
okay. Will you email me? Because I
Mhm.
have a resource for you. I have a resource for you. There's an online class thing that's free for young adults who are developmentally delayed in some ways, and it's about sexuality.
Okay.
So I'll send you that, and then um, I'll ask around and see if there's anybody that might be able to be more of a like support to them, because this is scary stuff. This is scary stuff.
It is because,
Yeah,
these often will say, we want to make their dreams come true. And I'm thinking, well, there's a reality around these kids too,
right,
these young
right,
adults.
right. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
And
because
so
you have
that's
to work within the framework.
every time.
Yeah. Okay, cool. She's lucky to have you. So email me. I will get you that. And I'll add it to the resources for everybody when I send out the recording. I'm going to make a note of that or I'll forget.
I
And
put my email in the chat. Does that help? Do you need a
okay, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Sarah, will you snag it? Cool. Yeah, thank you for asking that. I mean, none of this is perfect, right? I mean, everybody's kid is different, and I'm sort of talking low, mid support needs land here, and everybody's wired differently, like sexuality wise and brainy wise and heart wise and socially, right? It's complicated, but I think your niece is a really great example of what can happen when there wasn't enough front loaded, right? And it sounds like she's been through some trauma. And even though she might have gotten every bit that she needs, she's still making choices. But if she doesn't have the language or the information from the basics, it just makes this more complicated. And again, I just want to say thank you so much for coming today and joining me. And I'm, as everybody, delighted that we were not Zoom bombed with porn. Whew! Sarah was there for that. It was bad. I couldn't see it. Thank you for the love. Thank you for the sugar. I'll take the sugar. So just thank you so much. And, Rome was not built in a day. This is a process. And I really hope that you are interested in getting the Solution Center and joining that so you can hang out with me one-on-one, stay up to date, and then be able to take care of those emergency situations. And your kids need you, and you're perfect person for this, and it doesn't have to be hard or scary. And at the end of the day, your child has a right to have this information and has the right to have every opportunity to be a sexual person, to be in romantic relationships if they want to. And even if they don't want to, they have to navigate their peers. And this will help them do that well. And most likely even better than you did, because, right? Anyway, thank you so much. I will send out the recording probably Friday. I got to gather up some resources. Kim, I will be in touch with you directly. And then, as always, if you have questions or follow up, please don't hesitate to just reply to that email. I will get what you need when you need it. And thanks again. Thank you for trusting me with your people. It just means so much to me. And I hope this was helpful. So thank you. Bye. Thanks, Sarah, for being my backup.